2017, that we don't have to drive through the, you know what.
That question, I don't know if somebody from LWSC or Tony, Dan O'Neill, would you, it does divert from what this public hearing is for. That's a different question, but Dan, do you mind briefly touching on, I think it was in the newspaper this past week about another alternative. Is that what you're referring to now?
I'm not quite sure, but you know, as you know, especially last week, we had so much flooding and sewage on Commercial Bed Street in Lynn Lane that you couldn't even go through there.
Yeah, it was pretty bad citywide. I can tell you that the area I represented also had some incidences, several flooding, and I spoke with my colleagues, Darren Sear and Bill Trahan Jr., and there was terrible flooding. That storm this past Tuesday approached in the top 5 in the last 10 years of a storm event that occurred. My own basement was flooded. Dan, do you want to, there's a microphone here, or would you like to come up here? Either way.
I think fine. One of the projects in the scope was going to address the Commercial Street submain. In the late 70s, the Urban Renewal Program, they installed approximately 3 miles of separate stormwater systems. And the discharge point is a 60-inch stormwater system that discharges into the western interceptor at the manhole, basically, essentially under the bridge at Commercial Bed. So when we get extreme wet weather events like we did in the 4-inch rain, that's collecting all the runoff from the up area up almost to the commons, and it discharges right there at that point. At that point, the western interceptor is surcharged, and it has to relieve itself from that manhole, and the bridge pops up, and it floods the roadway. One of the programs in the presentation was a $6 million project relative to getting that Commercial Street submain out of the western interceptor and somehow to the receiving waters. That's one of the components I firmly believe that would significantly alleviate the flooding in the area. And I think we would get an instantaneous bang for your buck. Whereas some of the other projects, you're going to be looking at, like you said, 17, I think is optimistic. It's going to be longer than that. I spoke to the item briefly on, again, we have 3 systems that discharge to the interceptor along parallel with the bridge. One's at Shepherd, one's at Blossom, and one's at Commercial. And I think if you got those out of the system along the 93 catch basins that are tied to it, you would see an instantaneous, a bang for your buck that would be beneficial.
Okay, and the second part of my question is, with the GE selling all their property, and hopefully we'll be getting new condos, apartments, businesses into the Linway area, plus a possible hotel coming up, is this plan part, for the extra usage? Have you, looked into that, and is that increasing the sewer, the runoff and stuff with the new development going in?
Part of the initial stages of the project were, as I mentioned, to update the existing baseline conditions. And what we did was we looked at any area that was potentially developable, and we accounted for future flows from those areas. So, not knowing exactly what specific development would take place, we used the land type or the zoning use for that particular area and estimated the flows based on those types of zoning uses.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name is Tom Scanlon up on Road 1, and we get flooding too with all this rain. My question to you is, when you have to have these overflows to the outfalls, is that because the sewage treatment plant is not large enough to handle what we have now?
It's based on the plant being the size it is and also the pipes that convey the water to the plant.
Okay, now my question is the city of Lynn the only city that contributes to the sewage plant, or are there other towns adjacently using that?
There are 3 other towns that I'm aware of that tie into the commission's system and ultimately the treatment plant. It's Saugus, Nahant, and Swanson.
Okay, are they being billed any tax money for this?
My understanding, and Dan could answer this more specifically, but my understanding is that they would share an appropriate percentage based on the flow that they discharge into the commission system.
Well, how about if they pay 100% of it instead of the taxpayers of Lynn? Because they can always build their own for a couple of $1 billion instead of us flipping the bill. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Mizakowski. I'm on Camden Street, otherwise known as the Chop Liver District. We have had problems for years. I am third generation here complaining about this. We had Councilor Ellis work very hard for us, did an excellent job, but the maintenance of the work was neglected. Councilor Capano worked very hard helping us. Same problem. When I left my street, the street was starting to flood and it's not even raining. My question is, with the salt water, what are we doing with the salt water? That has to be going into the storm drains.
Yeah, I guess I can do my best. Camden Street, River Street, Bay Street, the elevation of the roadway there are in the 12 to 14 foot elevation range. If you have a mean high tide, sometimes the tide can approach a 10 or a 12. So the roadways here are the crown of the roadway, and the curbing might be a foot lower or what have you. And the mean high tide can come up to 10 or 12 or 11. So we have a discharge pipe for separate stormwater in that area. So you have a separate drainage system. When the rain comes, it gets to the system, discharges out to the Saugus River. When you coincide an extreme high tide with a wet weather event, sometimes the water from the roadway can't get out. But the tide builds up to here, and then the water on the roadway gets to here and tries to push it out. But there's going to be a time, a duration, a time of concentration for that water to get out. And like you said, other times there's no rain, and because the tide hits a certain elevation, Camden and River, and you see the water in the catch basin, and sometimes in the roadway. I don't really have a cure for the tide, to tell you the truth. When it hits, and I can tell you when the roadway is going to flood. Call me up and I can tell you when you're going to get some water on the roadway. That's the way it is. I don't really know. We could put a larger pipe in there and spend millions of dollars, but the tide...
You're putting the larger pipes in, nobody is doing the maintenance on it. They used to have the people come down from the sewer department and clean them out, take all the garbage out of it that's collected through the years, and it wouldn't flood, even on a bad rainy day. Now, I bet if you go down there, you'll find out that thing is all clogged, and this is why we have a problem down our end, because the city's not doing its maintenance.
Okay, well, when we have a new superintendent of the sewer department, he can certainly prioritize.
My name is well known down there. They know me very, very well.
Yeah,
I'm third generation. I've been fighting this battle all these years. You're just a newcomer.
People coming up. I think that sign up is for the folks going up. Have them come around and sign it. Send it on. Yeah, keep this.
Good evening, Richard Ramones, 116 River Street. Similar thing, third generation, house has been in the family since 1918. We have a toilet and a shower in the basement, same thing, sewage comes up. It doesn't have to be raining hard at all. as the previous speaker just said, the city would come down a couple of times a year just to blow out those sewer lines to keep them running clear. Now, in the last 10 years, anytime it rains, I have to go down, plug the shower, put a cinder block over the top, drain the toilet, stuff it with rags, put a bucket with bricks just to keep, and then the water will come up in the laundry tubs, and I'll have a sump pump pumping up the water from the laundry tubs. And now my concern is, they're putting 30 plus more apartment or condominium units down on River Street Place, tying into an already overtapped sewer line. It rains, the top of River Street, everybody knows you cannot get down River Street or Camden Street. You try to go around the other way, Western Avenue's flooded. We're like an island. Thank you, I just want to get that.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Rick Ford, I'm Councilman of Ward 7, and I just wanted to come down and support my fellow councilors. I lived through the 98 to 2002, the Westland work, and it was a big success in Westland. It helped immensely. We had, like you people, the swimming pools, the boats, and I don't know what you're going to decide. But after they left Eastern Ave and Washington Street, they came over to Westland. There's the bad part of closing the businesses, but in the end, I think it was money well spent. I don't know where you stand on that. We had no interest loans back then, if I remember correctly. I know you were talking about there's no interest loans. You have to pay them back, obviously, but do you have no interest loans?
It depends on what's going on. Honestly, at the federal level, at one time there was some debt forgiveness and some ARA money that was available to offset the costs. Don't know what the future holds, but obviously the Commission would seek out as much of that type of assistance as they could.
Thank you. I know how passionate Peter is about it, and I know we can't do nothing. And I hope this committee, if they have any questions for me at any point, I've been through all of this for years. I started off with a pile driver at Classical, and right off the bat, we had 11 miles of pipe laid, which led to the good part above ground, the new streets, the new sidewalks, the new pavement. So there are some good points, but I just wanted to let you all know how passionate Peter is, and we can't do nothing. So I hope there's a conclusion that is both for the homeowner and for the city.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
My name's Arvin Lee, and I'm a newcomer too. I'm the plant manager at Lynn, and we're probably the largest customer of the Lynn Water and Sewer folks. And I'm not sure what's right or wrong. As I said, I've only been here a year and a half, but I can tell you, we suffer like homeowners that I've heard here. We flood also off the commercial. Our receiving bay floods. We're very concerned about that. Just from a business point of view, it seems to make sense from what I read in the paper that we would attempt to do this at the $6 million rate versus the $106 million rate to see what the effect is. I can tell you if we do it at the $106 million rate, my bill goes up a $250,000 a year. And that's going to make it tough to do business here. We're community minded. I don't want anyone to get the feeling that we want to leave, but that's a lot of money for a business to absorb and move forward. That's my 2 cents.
Excuse me, thank you. Arby, was it Arby?
Aubrey Lee.
Arby Lee, okay, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Hi, Pete Capano, Councilor of Ward 6, Commissioner on the Water and Sewer Commission, new commissioner. I just have a couple of questions for Tony. Thank you for coming, thank you for doing this. Because there's been a lot written about this in the paper before we've even had a chance to discuss it, and I have no idea. I know we have to sell newspapers, and I understand that, but I want when people leave here today, we have an accurate assessment about what's going on. So I just wanted to ask you 2 or 3 questions here. This alternative plan that we've been reading about, that we read about in the paper, and that was brought up here tonight, will this solve the CSO problem, and will it do anything for relief for residents in Ward 6 in that area right there?
I think, I'm not familiar with the plan itself, other than I believe it's a component of the recommended plan. So it's actually a very important first step in achieving the overall plan. I think what Dan was saying is that if it's implemented, we then can evaluate what effect it's had on CSOs. But frankly, based on the modeling that we've done, it won't achieve the level of control by itself that we're recommending it gets put forward to DEP and EPA. Just keep in mind that this whole discussion about level of control, right now the Commission's essentially on the hook for zero overflows. And this plan was just intended to come up with something that was more of a compromise than the zero, because if we were to get to zero, it would be significantly more expensive than, or if even achievable, than what's on the table right now. So I think it's a good first step, because it certainly would provide some immediate relief to all the catch basins that are tied in down to the combined sewer in that area. But frankly, from my perspective, it's just part of the overall plan.
Thank you. I mean, just for people that are here, I mean, the presentation given here tonight is part of a study that was done by the consultant here on behalf of the Lynn Water and Sewer Commission. It took a long time, a couple of years, I believe, and it was paid for by the Commission, $370,000 to do this study. So everyone's input and questions here are welcome. This is what, we didn't come here to talk about the alternative plan. We came here to talk about this. If we have an alternative plan, it may be something that we could discuss on the Commission and see how it fits into the overall plan that we hope to submit. So I just wanted that to be said. The other thing that I read in the paper is that we're at 90% compliance for overflows. Is that a true statement or not?
I believe what's referred to with the 90 and 94% is really the percent capture that the Commission's system achieves in a typical year. So the flow that's generated from the rainfall events that happen in a typical year, you are achieving 94% capture of that annual rainfall. That can't be confused with compliance, because if you have, right now, under the consent decree that you have, if you have one overflow, you're technically not in compliance. So, and you can, if you recall from the slide that was up with the numbers of overflows that have happened in a typical year in all of the outfalls, and some of them are dozens of times a year. Kings Beach is maybe 1 or 2 times currently right now. So to use the 94% or 90%, it's really intended for capture, not compliance, because I don't think the Commission is 94% in compliance right now.
We are not in 94% compliance. The other thing that I read is that this plan would cause a 26 or 36% increase in rates in the first year. And there's nothing I saw on the financial analysis that you have here that says anything like that. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, the 20-year state revolving fund price, annual bill, average bill, is only $15 more than it would be if we did nothing at all. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's what the report showed. And I think that 36% number came from an original version of the report that was submitted to the Commission. Financial analysis that was done, a very conservative approach, and actually put that percent increase in the first year to raise enough revenue to be able to bring the project well into the first 10-year phase. So the report itself mentioned the fact that was not intended to be the distribution of rate increases, but was only an example of the impact that the project would have if it was all taken at one time. And obviously, you could spread that out over many years and make that rate increase something significant.
And in fact, that is what was done with the financial analysis that we laid out.
it was updated very shortly after that initial report was submitted to reflect that you wouldn't have to take that 36% rate increase in the first year.
Now, the last question I have, and I realize this is for people here to ask questions. If this work is done, in your opinion, and this is the work that you do, and this is what the commission has hired you to do, this is your job, would this work, in addition to bringing us closer to compliance with CSOs, would it also, as a secondary benefit, offer relief to the residents in West Lynn as far as flooding is concerned?
So in terms of bringing the city, the commission, closer to compliance, the answer would be yes. But the ultimate decision maker is EPA, and they're supported by DEP. So you go from current condition where they have a signed document that says you can produce zero, and we're asking them to produce, to allow the commission to generate something more than zero. So ultimately, they are the ones that have the final say, but I think what they have, what the commission has before it now, is a good starting point to negotiate with them. In terms of the benefit of the project, what we've recommended is to achieve the CSO control by sewer separation. In fact, we've done something a little bit more extensive than what was recommended back in 2004, so we promoted more sewer separation. The nature of sewer separation is to install storm drains where they don't already exist now. So I think by the nature of that type of a project, it would definitely provide a benefit to the neighborhoods.
Thank you. And one final question. I've also read that doing this work would tie up the Linway for months and months. Would it be necessary to tie up the Linway for months and months under this project?
The approach that, of course, nothing's been designed yet, but the approach that we would favor or recommend would be to try to use trenchless technology, basically try to tunnel under the Linway in order not to impact traffic, or to try to use that approach as much as possible to lessen the impact on the roadways. So clearly, traffic issues, business issues, homeowner issues, all have to be taken into effect when the design work is done, but I think the construction could be achieved without having to tie up the Linway.
Thank you so much. One final word is for people in the room, and I apologize for taking up so much time, but there's been so much said here. It's a shame we spent all this time to try and come up with a plan that will put us in compliance, and you know the muddy, sometimes the work, the leading up to this can be muddy to some extent, and this should be a good opportunity for people to come up here and give their opinions, ask some questions. And just my own personal thought here is don't believe everything you read in the Lynn paper as pertains to this project here. Ask questions. Most of you here have my number, and I'd be happy to get information, accurate information for anybody here that needs it. Thank you very much.
So I have a comment I'm living at 80 South Elm Street. My name is Enes Changalovich. So I live in this street like almost 10 years. So every rain, small or big storm, I have flooding under my basement on the street, have 3 feet water. Sometimes I get up, don't go to work, get out. No kids go to school. So, and after everything, water is gone. Is nobody coming cleaning, nobody come see, like 1 week stay like dirty street, smell bad, temperature is high, kids play outside. I don't know what happened. I have a couple of pictures here I give to you, you see. Thank you.
on Neptune Street Court, and the plans that, from what I understand, I don't understand a lot of the talk that we have, but I know what's in my basement, and I know what's going on in my residents' houses around me, because they call me, because if they don't know something, I'll find out. I know that Jay has water from the street slapping into his house. Cindy's got water on her front stairs that's coming in. I had to replace a pipe that went from the sewer, that outside big pipe thing, all the way that was connected to my kitchen was filled with, there you go, that. I had to have a plumber come and do this and replace the entire pipe because everything from outside, and it's not even mine, is in my basement. Every time it rains, I don't just get groundwater, I get gutter. So much that it cracked the pipe. It came through, my husband was going, I hear a rumbling, stood over it and blew in his face like a geyser. My husband has a rare form of lymphoma. It's not a cancer, they don't know what it is, but it affects his immune system. This is crap. So what's that going to do to our health if we just keep sitting here going, all right, we'll figure it out. We'll do a CSO plan, we'll spend all this money figuring out what to do with it, and then we'll say, hey, but I know a 1970s plan is going to be great, and that should be better. Is that going to stop that stuff from coming into my house? I need this to stop now. I have kids. And my husband's going to die. It has to stop now. Like, we can't keep talking about a plan. There's no one for us to call. Even when we do call, yeah, we're working on it. Do you know you live in a flooded area? Well, thank you. I had no idea. Wow. You know, there's nothing there to help us. And I actually, how would any of you like to be walking around and that smell is not just when it's hot. I know when it's coming before it even comes. When it's not raining, that comes into my house. My basement is literally infested with bacteria, parasites, everything. I have to test it. My husband can't go down there. So what are you guys going to do right now? Not 2017. I need to know what you guys are going to do to help me now, because this isn't my shit. It's my business. I don't want it in my house. How are you going to help me do that right now? What's your solution for that? Because I shouldn't have to have that. What do I do?
Well, we do have a backlog valve program. In the meantime,
It's $500. I don't have $500. Can I borrow it?
The Lynn Water and Sewer has a program. You said earlier
I'm part of
that
it.
you would do.
no, she's aware, she's,
The Lynn Water and Sewer will pay for that,
No, we have to pay for it first. We put the $500 up
and you'll be
first.
reimbursed.
Can I borrow $500?
no, you're not, we pay up to $500.
I have to put it up. And then I have to, yes, I have the paperwork from Rob, I have it. I have the signed agreement. I'm accepted into this program. We have to pay for
Well,
the
listen, you get a
$500.
contract and you submit an invoice to me, I will pay for it. That's how it
But
goes.
how do I do an invoice? I need the product. I don't have the
You
money.
spend an estimate from a contractor saying it's for $500.
And then who pays the guy to put it in?
I will,
And you pay the inspection and everything?
up to $500.
How much is the backflow valve?
Why do we even have to pay for it? It's not true, bro. Why should we have to pay for it?
Why can't you guys, if that's the case,
Why should we have to pay for it?
Sir, I ask you to hold your
I
comments.
just don't have the money to do this. I can't. If I send you the estimate, you're gonna come in free of charge. I don't have to put anything up front because that's not what my contract says.
Listen, you get a list of 3 contractors, and you select the cheapest contractor. I will reimburse, I will pay the contractor up to $500. That's the most.
So anything over, because I heard the backflow valve itself is 500.
Oh, I don't know about that. We pay up to $500.
So anything over, which I'm sure it's gonna be, then we have to pay for.
It shouldn't be significantly over. Yes, that's the practical.
So if it is over, even $1, you afford it, and you can live like that.
I'll pay it.
You'll pay the additional?
Now,
You guys gotta work something out. I can't live like this. I pay my taxes. You don't have to come knocking on my door. I pay my water bill.
Yeah, again, the policy adopted by the commission is up to $500 we pay. Commissioners want to make that a $1,000, that's fine with me. But right now, the policy is $500.
And that needs to be addressed because we can't afford that.
Okay.
You heard 'em.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Cassetta. I'm a Lynn resident, live on Eastern Ave. We're talking a lot about cost here. I was just taking some notes. The average increase in bill for the citizens of Lynn is expected to be $15 a year for 20 years. That's in a scenario where we pay for everything that we need. Is that correct?
No, just to be clear, the difference is no plan, no project, 20-year project, the annual average bill
Would be expected to be $15 a year.
right now, that's how.
If nothing occurs.
What do you mean if nothing occurs?
What you stated
Yeah.
was if nothing happens, your bill would be expected to go up at that rate that you're quoting. I believe, is that correct?
No, that's not true. It's if we actually pay for what we need, right? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks for the
We've funded
clarification.
over 20 years using SRF funding, that's what the
That's
table.
what, okay, so this does not factor in, however, the worst case scenario, potentially from exponential rainfall increases with global warming, which there are scenarios like that, right? Okay, so in turn, the cost to the citizens does not factor in their increased flood insurance costs, potentially, okay? So what I gather is that we are talking about saving pennies and letting our dollars go down go down the drain long-term in terms of increased insurance costs and actual potential damages to properties, right? And I just wanted to note, Mr. Lozzi, you said you work for the DEP.
Now that you mention it, Michael, I do, and
Yes.
just for the sake of everybody here, as a disclosure, I do work for the Department of Environmental Protection. However, I work in a program unrelated to this work.
But okay, so that said, you also have publicly expressed that we should defer to a much less comprehensive plan than the one that is on the table now that we're talking about, even as you're working for DEP. Is that correct?
No, I don't.
You did not publicly express in the daily item.
My hat, sir, this is a.
I'm just asking, yes or no? Yes or no?
Excuse me, and I'm answering. This is a hearing for CH2M Hill to present this updated plan. It has nothing to do with me and my role, which is a chairman of the Lynn Water and Sewer Commissioner. I do. My role as an employee of the Department of Environmental Protection has nothing to do with any of this work. I would recuse myself if the department became involved at any point in this. And just for now that you raise it, I'd like to ask, Tony, has LWSC received any directives from EPA or DEP while you've been working on this updated supplemental plan?
Back in, I think it was January.
No, in the time that we voluntarily voted for that plan, the commission voted approximately 3 years ago. In that time, has DEP or EPA had any direct involvement in thus far?
I believe they have.
In what manner?
They wrote a letter to the commission asking to review the scope of work and then asked the commission for a schedule for the supplemental plan.
Okay, I'm unaware of that, and I have no involvement with it, and that's my
Okay, now that
disclosure.
said, you did publicly say in the Daily United last week, right, that you were for a plan that was much
I
less
was a
comprehensive than the plan
proponent
that we're
when
talking about now. Is that
When
correct?
that particular plan came up, it was a result of, at the request of Councilor Peter Capano, I had a meeting with Dan O'Neill, Executive Director, Anthony Marino, Chief Engineer at Lynn Water and Sewer, and we requested them to come up with something in the short term as a solution to the problems that the councilor had been communicating. And before that could come to any fruition, the supplemental facilities plan that was done originally in 2004 was updated voluntarily, and it was supposed to be, at what cost was it originally estimated by Anthony?
I think we had, the original cost for the plan was $150,000.
It was $125,000.
We had to add some additional effort as a result of requests by...
Okay, but the point I'm making is that it originally, the estimate doubled the cost once we entered into it. It was not directed by the EPA or the DEP to update that supplemental facilities plan that we see the result of today.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is though, your personal opinion is that we shouldn't spend as much money as we probably need, while also working for the DEP, which would basically allow for the facilitation of that money. Is that correct?
Are you saying I'm not entitled to an
opinion?
opinion?
However you want it, but
No, but I mean, sir, what are you saying?
I'm just asking.
I can't express an
Is that
opinion?
true? Okay, so you're saying you work for an agency that would help to facilitate this support for the city of Lynn, while you were also basically expressing your opinion in a public newspaper.
We're making an inaccurate statement, first of all. Sir, this is not the venue. Well, I am. I'm clarifying it. I have no involvement with this project in any way, shape, or form in my duties. Okay. Thank you.
My name is Russell Passos, third generation West Limmer, also River Street. Presently I live the other end of the swamp, Berry Park. My house abuts the tennis court. I've worked many years with our counselors. I thank them. 8 hours back there also, which I want to see him probably tonight. One of the main things my concern is what percentage, everyone talks about the CSO and separate the water, what percentage of this project will not just increase storm drains, but do actual separation of the lines? I understand the volume of water, adding the extra storm drains and running that out to relieve some of the storm drain water that's in the sewer lines. But that's not going to alleviate the problem long term. So if we're spending big money on that for mostly adding storm drains, I think we're going in the wrong direction. I think the council, in my opinion, should have an emergency vote on money for preventative maintenance, because the guys that want to do the work and know the problems and have to fight with all the residents about the problems can't do it without the money. I've been in the field long enough. I know I've been in the city hall for 4 years, different people working on things. I helped with Barry Bond 20 years ago with John Wolberger. You need money to do the thing, and preventative maintenance, cleaning out those drains, that's got to happen. My house gets flooded with contaminated water every time it gets flooded down there. Most of the time it's because there's leaves filling all the storm drains. Neighbors go out and clean as much as you can, but you got to wait to do it. And they are, it's shit. It's contaminated water. It's not just dirty water, it's contaminated. Like the woman explained, I don't have all the medical answers for it, but I know it's no good. When the tennis court floods, my house is directly right next to it. If the storm drains aren't draining, water comes directly up my foundation. My son is going 6 days straight now, through the storm. And that's just because the sewer lines aren't clean. Never mind if they're the proper size or what direction they go or where the switching stations are. Preventative maintenance is a big issue for the whole city. I've lived in Western long enough, I've waded through the puddles. I played right field in 1969 down there. I know where the water was. It was a foul line of the outfield and the corner fields. Now the fields changed, they changed direction, but they're still moving away from the same water. And they got a main sewer system going through there. You can have that thing that'll be draining, the neighborhood will be flooded, but you hear the water from the park going into the sewer lines. And then you get vice versa, the park gets flooded, but the water goes down in the streets. It's pretty asinine when you sit there and watch it happen. Preventative maintenance, guys. I mean, I know there's a lot of other things